Welcome to the Innovators Insider podcast. I'm Mike the Professor, joined by my colleague in Las Vegas, Richard Doyle, the user group guy. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Mike, and yourself?
Just wonderful. The weather is changing. It's September. It's fall. We got new stuff to talk about.
Yeah,
We're wearing different kinds of pants.
in fact, they're calling it faux fall out here because we've dipped down into the 80s, but they expect that Las Vegas will still see some effects of summer. But I did pull out the linen pants today and the cabana look as a little celebration of at least the start of faux fall. And with any luck at all, it'll continue. But I expect we'll get some more warm weather. So.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, if I go to Vegas in February, it's going to be like summer here. So
yeah. So we've got a great show today. This is a show that I'm very, very interested in because when it comes to PLM, I know nothing. The last time I was really in industry was back in 2004 when I was really working in an engineering department that had to deal with things like, CAD and manufacturing and bills of materials and purchasing and, everything that goes along with developing, manufacturing, and selling a product. PLM was, I guess, I wouldn't call it its infancy back then, but I would say that probably most people didn't really understand what it was. And since I've been out of industry, I still don't understand what it was. So let's go ahead and bring in an expert on the subject. Our first guest is the Vice President of Product Management at PTC. Please welcome Graham Birch. Hello, Graham. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Richard.
Oh, wrong one. Sorry. I have the worst luck with my sound effects. But Graham, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. Good to see you too. It's a nice studio you got in here. This is impressive. I see they spared no expense for your studio.
Yep. And we're very comfortable here too. Yeah. So, Graham, I don't know if you heard my introduction, but I am a total know nothing when it comes to PLM. So, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll get into the question of what is PLM.
Yeah, certainly. So, as you might detect by my accent, I'm not a native of North America. I actually started working in this industry back in the days of does anybody remember computer vision?
Oh yeah.
And, CAD's
first CAD system. Yeah.
So that's where I started my career, and you moved on from there. Way back in the day, computer vision had a PDM system, and that's something we should talk about, Richard. Like the alphabet soup here. What's PDM and PLM, and why do the letters matter?
Optegra? Was that what it was called?
Oh, you're so modern, Mike. Yeah, it became Optegra, but it was before then even. This is going to date me around on IBM mainframes. Right, that was way back then. Yeah, that was when CAD all happened on Data General hardware, and it was big and expensive. And yeah, times moved on. So then I moved across the United States working for computer vision, and computer vision, as you know, was acquired by PTC, and I really spent my whole career at the confluence of CAD and PLM. How do you effectively get CAD data out of the hands of the CAD department and give it to the rest of the enterprise so that it can be used for downstream information?
Right. So, what do you think came first? Did PDM come first? Did PLM come first? How did that all shake out? I vaguely remember things in the late 90s that Seco Auto Manager and some of the old, those were some of the first PDM systems I thought were commercially available. I remember PDM systems that were just self-baked. Each company made their own database kind of thing.
Yep.
What are your thoughts and memories there? And you too, Richard.
Well, I was just going to interject real quickly. I seem to recall a lot of PDM systems calling themselves PLM systems. And, so the difference was hard to distinguish back then.
It was. I don't think there are any really hard, fast lines. I still don't think there are, to be honest. And you'll still find kind of vague definitions at the intersection there. PLM, like if you think about it, product lifecycle management. We've been, when did that all start? You could argue, and how far back do you want to go? But you could argue back in the day, in the let's call it the craft era, right? When you're building wooden horse carts and things, it was your designs evolved really, really slowly over generations, and handcrafted, because making mistakes was darn expensive. That was your whole livelihood just gone because you made a wheel that fell apart. And the thing that changed everything was the introduction of drawings. And then with the introduction of drawings, what we did is we separated design from manufacture, and all of a sudden we introduced the idea of a life cycle. So now we've got stages, and we got things that happen in design, and we got things that happen in manufacture. And then how do we hand off between design and manufacture? So you could argue the invention of the drawing was a fantastic invention, because it allowed this separation. So you had experts in design that could hand off to experts in manufacturing, and but at the same time, it introduced this rift. And to your point, Richard, we've been trying to close that gap ever since. And so PDM, PDM really, product data management, really came on the back of computer-aided design. And and you can see this, the echoes of it still exist in the industry, because most PDM systems were designed and developed by the major CAD vendors. And as 3D CAD became more and more prevalent, you could create an immense amount of data really quickly. And if you weren't careful, you were working on the wrong versions. You would lose stuff, and so they decided, oh my goodness, we need to do something to get a handle on this. And so product data management came about.
Right. And PDM systems, I've implemented PDM at hundreds of companies over the years, and I always thought the main benefits of PDM were, you're able to find your information in a kind of a central place. They call them a vault sometimes, right? You just go to the vault and get your data. You can search for that data in an easy way. Typically, there's some kind of database that's backing it up like that, so you can easily find all parts made of a certain material or what have you, right? There is the ability to find where parts are being used in other assemblies, right? That was one of the pillars. I think there's 4 pillars in the world of PDM, and then there's what's the last one? Security, right? Security and workflow, getting the right information to the right person at the right time. And those goals are still good, but I think when we went from the drafting board, from the paper to CAD, that rift wasn't closed enough personally. And, when Onshape came out, and I saw the way Onshape did it for the first time, the PDM being built into the CAD instead of the, kind of like you have your CAD and then you have your PDM, totally separate things. When you first saw the way Onshape kind of did it, what was going through your mind? Because you've been in PLM for a while. You worked at PTC, right. You've done a lot of great work. So, what were your thoughts there?
Oh, it was delightful. I can't think of any other word to describe it, to be honest, Mike. I've spent decades, I think, of my life trying to teach a PLM system how to manage CAD data, and it's hard, right? There's like a gazillion types of files, and they all have interrelated dependencies, and you try and teach a PDM or a PLM system how to manage raw CAD data. It's really tough. And then the CAD data, the CAD system evolves and things get out of date, and you have to go back and make changes to the PLM system again to re-educate it. So when I looked at Onshape, I just thought, you don't have to do any of that. Like, Onshape just does it. So things like searching and browsing and version management, it's just built into the natural workflow of Onshape. And I remember saying to my boss, I will never build another CAD and PLM system integration again, because it's just so taxing and it's so hard work. And then when I saw Onshape, I thought, oh, wait a minute, this is a game changer. because all of the heavy lifting of PDM stays within Onshape, and really all we need to do is sync and link. Right.
Sync and link. I like that. That's so that's a nice segue into the Onshape Arena connector and why that's important, what that does for Onshape users, what it does for Arena users for that matter.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to know that there's a connection now. Why would people want to connect their CAD and PDM like Onshape has with PLM? In this case, with Arena PLM, and we should probably step back just a little bit and make sure people understand what Arena PLM is first before we even go down that path. I think to make sure, because a lot of people may be aware of Arena, but maybe a few don't. Don't know what Arena is and how they're part of our family.
Yeah, that's a valid point, Mike. And I think maybe underlying the question there is it's not so much why would someone consider connecting these? The first question would be, well, why would I need CAD and PLM? So what value does a PLM system add over and above what I already get with Onshape that's already got release management, right, and revision control? So the way to think about it is, Onshape does fantastically well dealing with mechanical design. But we all know that to get a product out of the door, there's other things to consider, because you could really think of the mechanical design in many electromechanical products is the aesthetics and the housing, right? But the guts is usually electronics and software. And so the complete product bill of material is the mechanical assembly, it's the printed circuit boards, it's the software that goes into the product. It's the warranty card that goes in the packaging. It's the packaging itself. It's the documentation. There's a whole host of other information that goes into a complete product bill of material, and Arena does that. And then you get to the point where you say, well, okay, so we've designed this fantastic product. How are we going to make it? Like, what's our supply chain strategy? Who are our suppliers? Who are our preferred suppliers? Who's going to make what? How do we get information out to those suppliers? That's what Arena PLM excels in. And then you get to, okay, well, now we're going to make a change. Well, we can't just arbitrarily go change something and then push it on the rest of the world. We know that causes unexpected costs downstream. You're catching manufacturing by surprise. Your supplier turns around and says, well, it's an interesting change, but I can't handle that kind of material. So incorporating all of the disciplines into a more formalized change management process where you could say, hey, I'm thinking of making this change to this part for these reasons. Does anybody object? Right? And just have the whole value chain chime in on and take a look at the change and comment on it, give you feedback before you go ahead and make the change. So those are the kind of things that people are finding value out of Arena PLM.
So that makes sense. Sense. So I think we can probably go down the road of why would you want to connect the two?
Yeah. So assuming that you're using Onshape, right, and you decide we've got about as far as we can managing our bills of material and change process in spreadsheets. So we're looking for a PLM system. So let's say you choose something like Arena PLM. The trick now is to make the two systems appear as much as possible as one, right? We're still closing the gap, remember? So if I design something in Onshape, the Onshape assembly, as I'm building the assembly, it's inherently building the bill of material. And so what I'd like to do is to be able to transcribe that bill of material without error, and at the push of a single button, get all of that into my PLM system. And that's really the heart of the integration. To get high quality, high fidelity, reliable information out of Onshape and make it available to the rest of the enterprise.
Yeah, I think I'll pull up a little bit of a demo as we can kind of talk about it as we kind of play around here. But I have my Onshape environment here, company called Titan. If we're gonna just have companies named after Greek gods and stuff, but we have this small headset thing, just to kind of have an example of what we're talking about here. So you mentioned the bill of materials, Graham. Onshape, CAD systems do this, right? They build a bill of materials when you assemble stuff. It's a great benefit, right? And you can look at it in multiple structures, right? You have top level BOM, structured BOM, PLM. Like when you have, like you mentioned, packaging and documentation and stuff like that. There's more BOMs, right? That go beyond the CAD kind of information, right? I think that's another reason for getting this stuff into some sort of PLM structure, because you're not going to deal with that in CAD. Your engineers aren't going to deal with putting a data sheet as part of the BOM, right? It's just that's not really what it's made for, right? But here's our BOM. I have an item list here. I have the name of my assembly here and a part number for that. It's an 830 number for this type of product assembly, right? But quite often, when you have a sophisticated, high-tech product, and you want to keep track of things, you want part numbering that matches the type of product that you're manufacturing, right? So categories of things, right? Let's actually set a category on one of these parts, right? Here I have a couple of parts here. I'll just go to the properties of them. And there we are. We have categories in Onshape. And this is something that we've had, right? Being able to categorize an object has been something that you could have in Onshape. And the reasons prior to this connection were because, let's say I set these as the antenna category. You might want to have different custom properties down here for antennas versus sheet metal parts, right? That was the original intent, right, for this. But if these were fabricated plastic, right, they're going to get a certain part numbering scheme, and you could give it there, or you could give the part number here, right? And we've had that in Onshape to give the part number, from the bill of materials here. But where do you think that part number came from, right? This came from Arena. So in Arena, what's done in Arena to set that up, Graham?
Yeah. So part numbers are they're important, right? It's almost like the DNA of a manufacturing company. Everything has to have its identity, and typically customers want to have a single source for part numbers. Right? Otherwise, you end up with duplicates and there's confusion. So what we did here with the integration is to wire in Arena's part numbering into the back of Onshape, so that for the Onshape user, there's no change. Like to your point, Mike, you don't know where those part numbers came from. They could have come from Onshape, they could have come from Arena, but you set the system up and it all happens, invisibly.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that's been part of the goal of the whole integration. Onshape has a way of doing things, keeping things really simple, unobtrusive, and productive. And quite honestly, PLM integrations don't have a great reputation with engineers, because they get in the way, that it's an extra step, it's 15 more screens I need to go through with check-ins and check-outs. And what we wanted to do with this integration was just exactly like you've done there, make it just a natural part of the Onshape experience. And so in building this whole connection between Onshape and Arena, we added one button.
Yeah.
Just one button. Like, how many other CAD PLM integrations on the planet operate through one button?
And that was it for the setup. A few things, few field mapping exercises, and of course there's no servers to worry about to keep stood up. No calls in the middle of the night for you as a CAD manager to worry about how come my connection's not working. These things are handled by Onshape and Arena being connected together at the company level, at a in your company settings, right? So it's really very fail safe. It's not going to fall apart. And I've been a CAD manager. I've seen these things fall apart and take months and 6-month project to do very simple things that can be done in just a few minutes of setup here.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably familiar, Mike, with the problem of, hey, we just had to upgrade our CAD software.
Yeah.
But now the PDM software is broken. And the interface that we had to, our PLM system is now failing because we upgraded the PDM system. And by the way, our connection to ERP is just gone. And so the cascading effect of just upgrading software, all that goes away when you move it to the cloud.
Yeah. And you just mentioned the big things, like even simple things can throw the whole thing into a state of disarray. Like, oh, wait, we upgraded our SQL database server and now this needed to be upgraded. And there's so many things that can go wrong.
Yeah, we had to upgrade the operating system that the database server was running on. So now the database server is out of date and we have to upgrade that software, which cascades into upgrading the PDM software, which cascades into upgrading, and then it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah. So all that's gone. So, and then, what does this look like in Arena, right? First of all, I need to synchronize the BOM. Just hit that button.
That one button.
One button. Literally one button. It's a beautiful button of the Arena logo. And it gives you a nice message. Your system is not hosed while this is happening. You can actually do other work, and it's doing all the stuff in the background, and it's doing a lot of cool things in the background, essentially, and you're going to see the result of that. I don't know if we kind of lied a little bit. We have one more button, but it's just a helpful shortcut.
That's a helper.
The helpful shortcut, and nobody's going to be upset about this button because it brought you right to the item master in Arena, right, for that.
Yeah, isn't that perfect? Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's there. I just popped that over. We have all the information right here. All the part numbers that I had just set up. I have my bill of materials, showing up right here with all the different pieces of plastic, the circuit board subassembly. It's all here. And then from here, you would do your PLM stuff.
Right.
What would be, just to simplify it greatly, what kind of things would you do in PLM from here with this bill of materials, just as a for somebody that might not have seen this system before?
Yeah, so if you look across, you see where you got the green bill of materials highlighted there on your screen? Yeah, so if you just scan across to the right, you can see some of the important operations like sourcing, right? So I can go and assign suppliers, supplier part numbers, and I can build out a sourcing strategy. Costing, I can go in and put in prototype costs, production costs from multiple suppliers. And, that's important these days, right? You don't want to have a single supplier strategy given the current state of supply chain. So, as you walk across there, so there's, there's projects, you can assign projects and milestones and so on. Quality, you can run quality processes and change processes. There's a ton of things. Once the Onshape data gets in here, it's really not changing the data, the form and fit of the data, but this is all the life cycle data that has to go around. You really call it the operational data, right? The operations that have to happen in order to turn the design into an actual product.
Yes, indeed. And then, of course, you can get some greater detail. Arena PLM, by the way, has been around a long time. This is not some whippersnapper startup thing. Arena's been around, 22 years?
Fun fact. Yeah, fun fact. Arena PLM, it was launched in 2000, which is actually 6 years before Google even announced the idea of a cloud. Right, so it was cloud PLM before there even was a cloud.
I mean, I remember this. I was a CAD engineer at the time. I wasn't involved in the dark world of being part of a CAD company at that time. I was actually working in the real world. And, I saw this thing, bomb.com, right?
Yeah,
and it was a great way of getting your bill of materials information on the internet so you could share with your suppliers and actually get parts made. And, that's how this system evolved. So there's this is one of the most popular PLM systems for high tech medical devices. And it's really innovative as being one of the first real SaaS-y type products out there. Along with, I would put it right up there with Salesforce.com. It being around at the same time, same kind of like Bay Area kind of roots, of the company. Really cool.
Well, you think about the legacy of PLM, and it really started in automotive and aerospace industries around configuration management, and
right.
the early systems were really toolkits, to be honest, and you needed an army of IT professionals to configure it, to feed it and maintain it. And it's gradually becoming more accessible to smaller companies. And what Arena PLM did was like way ahead of its time in saying, why don't we take the burden of you having to host all of this software? Like, we'll take that, we'll put all of this in the cloud, and then you can just buy a subscription.
Right.
I mean, that was pretty remarkable given the era in which that was happening. I mean, we don't even think about it now. We think, of course, why wouldn't you do that, right? But you think about that back in 2000, that was very visionary.
Totally.
And what it did was it made what previously has been really high reach, high cost software. It put it in the hands of small to medium sized companies.
Exactly. So, we get questions quite often. I'm involved quite often in customer situations and companies that are looking at Onshape for the first time, and more often than I'm noticing now versus 5-10 years ago, people are asking out PLM earlier in startup companies, like people that are doing new product design, like a company doing a AR VR headset or whatever it might be, brand new company. They want PLM right away because they actually need it more than the big companies, if you think about it, because they're not manufacturing their own products. They're outsourcing, right? So they need to keep control over all the different suppliers. Even a big company, they don't make everything all themselves anymore, of course. I mean, it's really interesting to see those trends happening now as well in PLM. You talk to a Bay Area startup hardware, software. Well, nobody's a pure hardware company now either, right? That's another thing that's happening, right?
Yep.
It's there's electronics, there's circuit boards, there's software. How does Arena help there?
Arena, the kind of customers that find Arena most useful are those customers that are in the kind of high tech or in the medical device field. And characteristics there is it's, as you said, multidiscipline. So there's the mechanical, the electronics, the software. It's also they're dealing with products that are the life cycle just operates at such a high velocity. You're in the automotive industry, and really, products are going to last for 20 years or so. In this, like this headset, how many generations will it be of this headset over the next 2 years? So it's very short life cycles. Very not an awful lot of reuse. A lot of it is very innovative design thinking from product to product. And because you're moving quickly, and you need to synchronize all of that with what's happening in your supply chain, that's where you really do need some help from a software system, and Arena PLM is a great solution for that. Plus putting all of that in the cloud, it makes integrating with your suppliers so much easier. Because I know back in the day we'd say, bring your suppliers in. They go, well, what am I going to do? Set up a VPN for all of these, hundreds of suppliers, and they got to come through my firewall. And so
the IT guys always sweat when that conversation starts. I've had those conversations.
So back to your question previously, Mike. What did I think when I saw Onshape? And I think my response was delightful, because it's in the cloud, Arena's in the cloud. Accessibility for supply chain and making that whole value chain operate smoothly. The word we've been using around here recently is frictionless.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of friction in traditional, CAD and files and PDM systems and passing stuff around. Yeah, you can make it work, but boy, it's hard work. And you don't want to change it once you got it set up. Yeah, you move all this into the cloud and you link and sync, and that friction just goes. And so that means that you take away friction, you get speed, less heat. Right?
Yeah. Richard, is this helpful? Are you learning what PLM means here?
I'm learning a lot. I'm learning especially the differences between PDM and PLM. I loved looking at the Arena screen. I've seen it before in some internal demonstrations, because it reminds me of back in 20 years ago, how it was 3 or 4 different departments that were all doing these things. It was purchasing, it was manufacturing, it was engineering, and they weren't all working with necessarily the same data. I mean, there was a lot of paper that got pushed around. I recall having to create a bill of materials in my CAD system and have it, be perfect on my drawings so that manufacturing could use those drawings, but then also having to duplicate that information by entering it into the ERP system because there was no way to link those two. I'm learning a lot, especially about the differences and where we go. And the one thing that we haven't touched on here in the product life cycle is obsolescence and recycling. And Graham, do you think that that's, especially the recycling part, sustainability, if you will, is that going to become more important?
I think it certainly will. The pressure, I think, on product manufacturers to demonstrate that they're doing the right thing, behaving responsibly, will certainly that will increase. Certainly over the rest of my career, I'm convinced. And so the question becomes, well, how do you do that? And it's picking the right components, the right materials. It's knowing, what are the requirements? Like, do the component match the requirement? And do the requirements include things like sustainability, recycling? Do I understand what materials are used in each of these components? And if I was to go back and figure out, where are all my opportunities for optimizing components for reusable materials? You've got to have a database of all of your components that you can search, and search on things like materials and retrieve those, and then you can make some judicious decisions. So yeah, I think for sure, Richard, I think it's going to influence the thinking around how we design, deliver, and dispose of products.
Well, I think this has been a good introduction into PLM. I think I'm excited to keep showing this and seeing all the reactions to this. Thank you, Graham, for sharing some time with us today, and can't wait to see how this continues.
Yep, and I appreciate the education as well. And I hope to continue my education by taking an even closer look at the Onshape Arena connector.
Yeah, you should. You'll have fun with it, Richard.
Yep, you bet I will.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure to spend some time with you.
Take care, Graham.
See you later, Graham.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. That was great to catch up with Graham. I've been working with him now for the last 9 months or so. And, great person.
Yep, with quite a history. Yep.
Extremely knowledgeable, great history. It's great to have him. So do we have something coming up next, Richard?
I think we do. And, Michael, we talked about this. I think we're going to make this a regular segment on each of our shows. And that's going to be our tech tips. And let's go ahead and bring in our tech tip presenter of this episode, Mehul Gala. Hello, Mehul. How are you?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
You betcha. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the tech tip here.
Yeah, my name is Mehul Gala. I am an Onshape fan that became an Onshape employee. So I worked at a company and helped them deploy Onshape on a global scale, displacing an incumbent CAD system. I have 20 years of product development experience before that. So what I really wish is that we would have had Arena at all these other companies. I was thinking about all the places we could have put it to use and all the friction it would have removed. So
Yeah.
that was fun to see. But I have a tech tip for you, though, also, and a joke.
And a joke. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, bonus joke.
Let's put
So,
you in focus here because I'm screwing out there. There we are. All right.
so we're going to look at how to copy and paste mated parts in an assembly. But first, why was copy nervous on its date with paste?
I don't know.
We'll give Michael a sec to get the laugh button ready, but because cut was at another table and they were a controlling X.
Oh my goodness.
All right, sorry.
You should have queued up groan.
I had to steer it in the right direction, Richard. So let's get to this. Onshape allows you to copy and paste components in an assembly, bringing along mates and items as well. So there's 3 steps here. You select the components you want to copy. So in this case, whoops, I hid the clamp there. So I'm going to select the clamp and then this screw. I'm going to hit copy. And then I can hit paste or Control V. And there it goes. And then I can position it where I want it to go. So in this case, I'm going to connect this mate connector to this mate connector. And then it moves everything together. Nice. And as you can also see, it brought along the item that is the moisture resistant grease here as well. So it's a little bit unique and it could improve some workflows dramatically.
Oh,
well,
absolutely.
I mean, dramatically. I mean, that's like the first time I did that, it was by accident, and I openly wept and cried in the middle of a demo with a customer because it was so amazing. Because it was like you just copied and pasted, just using normal copy and paste, and then all your mates came over that were relevant, and you didn't have to think about that. You didn't even need to open a special command. You just did copy and paste, and you had non-graphical items. You had grease attached to it, and that worked. Like, come on.
I had the same exact reaction, Michael, the first time that this happened to me. Like you say, almost by accident. Fortunately, I got to cry by myself. I wasn't around any customers, but I agree with you. I mean, this is, I had used a previous CAD system for a long time, and that system had something like this that was hit or miss. I mean, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Quite often, maybe it was operator error, and I understand that. But here, your operator can't make an error; it just works.
Yeah. The mates are there. We even have another command, replicate, that what kind of takes this and to another level. A little bit more. So you can have it find patterns of things. Instead of you having to manually, kind of made it in. But there are use cases for both.
Yep.
100%. This just works. I mean, it just.
And the thing about replicate is it's there, it works, and what it's supposed to do. The thing about accidentally running across this is you didn't know it was supposed to do that, and it just did it.
Exactly. So that's a great tip. Everybody should know that tip that uses Onshape. Like every single person should know this tip. This is like one of those important ones. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mehul.
Yeah,
hey, thanks for having me.
We need some more. We need some more of your posts up here, so we'll get you on again, and I'm sure we'll have some more stuff to show.
Yep.
What we should do is we should bring back everybody. If Graham's still here, I still see Graham in the green room there. So maybe we should all just come back, do a final Onshape wave, and I think wrap things up.
That sounds good to me.
All right, so let's do the transition here. And welcome back, Graham, from the void.
The void that is the green room, right?
Yes.
So, and certainly thanks to Graham and Mehul for being here today. Folks, I think I try to say this every time, but if you like what you're seeing here, like what you're hearing here, please give us a like and and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. Mike and I are
You can
having
find this on all the streaming platforms and
Yep.
the podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I use what do I use?
Well, I'm a visual guy, so I prefer the YouTube version, especially when we do tips and things like that where we're sharing the screen. So that's always good. But we try to do our best to make sure that even folks that are listening on the audio versions, get something out of these shows as well. So we appreciate our viewers. We've had a lot of them. I won't say how many. But we have had a lot of them. We certainly appreciate that. And we look forward to continuing this for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Graham. Thanks, Mehul.
Yep.
Well, that's the Onshape wave.
This is the Onshape wave.
That's the Onshape wave.
There's this wave. There's this wave. But yeah. Once again, thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And like, share, subscribe, do all the things, as Richard said. So thanks again.